always wanted to be a photographer from the age of probably like 15 or 16. When I got the job at Roughwear, I started in their packing department. When I was working for this Spanish fashion company, their social media marketing, and I had convinced them to let me do it remotely, and I was living in Spain and climbing. Eventually was like, I can't keep doing both of these, and one of them makes me really happy and one of them doesn't. So I just like really slowly like acquired gear. And then one day I was like, wow, I'm a photographer. These slides are from Slaydies, which was a film that I made. It really changed my career. This was in 2018. It was the Eco Challenge in Adventure Race in Fiji. This was for Visit Idaho with Natives Outdoors, which is an all-native production company that I work with. These are both taken at Smith Rock, and like coming from a photographer who shoots a lot at Smith Rock, like the timing of images is key.
Welcome back, everyone. So we are here today with Tara Kerzhner, who's a photographer and director and accomplished climber. In case you missed part 1, go back to the previous episode where you can hear all about Tara's creative journey as a photographer. So let's go ahead and start that slideshow.
Here are some fun photos of me as a
I
child.
love this. Baby pics. This is the first time I've had baby pics, so I'm really excited.
Well, okay,
Yeah.
so I was really like not wanting to put these in here, but I ultimately did because my friend who was watching me make this told me to. But I did this.
Well, thank your friend for me, because this is the best start to any slideshow.
Because so I did this Adorama talk once, and I had this whole slide about like me growing up in Bend and like how I kind of got my artistic ability from my dad, and these like photos of my dad, and people in the comments were like, this is so boring, and I was like, I'm sorry. So anyways, this will be quick. I'm just showing these photos of like me and my dad and my brother. I grew up in Bend, Oregon, and my dad is an artist. He was a tile setter for 25 years, and then he got into lapidary art. And so he passed away a few years ago, but I am going through all of his lapidary art now, and 2 like literal tons of rocks. And so I always have felt like there's this connection. We have a really deep connection. We were always really close. And so I feel like when I think about my art, I think about his art too, because it just feels like we are like entangled, if you want to get into science. Let's talk about science. So anyways, this is us at Smith Rock, which is a place I've been going since I was a tiny. And I put the photo on the left only because that's me being exactly my personality that I have today.
I was going to say, is that the 100% you image of like, are those like pantaloons on your head or what?
Somebody said that to me, and I was like, wow, I've had this bitchy face my whole life.
I was born with RBF, baby.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. I was like, don't even start with me. Okay.
I don't know. I feel like you look kind of like you have this like modelly, like tossing your hair, kind of maybe more of like a drama queen moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that photo was so funny just because of the expression. Okay, we are leaving this slide now. Goodbye. All right, so I wanted to start with a few slides of shoots that really made a really big impact on my career. I thought that would be kind of fun to talk about. So these slides are from Slaydies, which was a film that I made in 2017 with Colette McInerney. Did I do that right? Dang it.
The only reason I know that is she wrote an article for Climbing, and like the first line was Colette McInerney, like Bert and Ernie, and that's all I've had to know to remember it. Yeah, so
write it like that. So yeah, we've got Margo Hayes on the left here, and then Emily and Margo on the right. And this was such a significant shoot for me, and it really changed my career for the better, because it was this just like really cool opportunity to make a film that would get a lot of eyes on it. I mean, I don't know how many views it has, but I think it's in the millions.
Wow.
But which, I mean, whatever. It's not like Magnus Midbow has his like YouTube channel that has like millions of views of him like dressing like an old man. You know what I mean?
I just saw those, like some of those the other day. So,
Oh my God, they're so funny. I love them. Very into it. Okay, so Slaydies was like this film that La Sportiva asked um, me to make, and Emily was like, "You should bring Colette." And I didn't really know Colette that well at the time, but I was like, "Okay, I'll bring Colette." And
mhm.
La Sportiva picked the athletes, and I didn't really know Emily or Margo or Paige that well. I had met them all like once,
Mhm.
and or maybe a couple times, but we really weren't friends. We started a group chat called Slaydies at the time to like talk about logistics. And I would say like on a personal and professional level, this shoot was very life changing for me because these women became some of my closest friends, and that is something that I really didn't expect. And so we still have our Slaydies chat to this day, the same chat on WhatsApp, and it basically gets, I mean, somebody's talking in it every single day. So if
Wow.
that gives
Yeah.
you an idea of like the connection that we all still have. So on a personal level, like this shoot was incredible because I've never like connected with people like that before. It's
Mhm.
just we all like really enjoyed each other's company. And then on a professional level, the film was a big success, even though it had a lot of
Criticism.
drama surrounding it. I guess like people were really upset about it for a lot of reasons. Like people either loved it or hated it, which I actually could think it means it was a successful film.
Yeah, totally.
It
I
was
mean,
funny.
that's
It was
good.
like
You want people to either love it or hate it. If they have no opinion, it means that it doesn't warrant an opinion. That's not
right.
necessarily a good thing.
I think that there's also like this vulnerability. Like if you're a woman out there making a film about women, like I don't know why, but like you might get ripped up, and maybe that was just an era, but we definitely got ripped up for this one for like a few different reasons.
Was this your like project that you sought sponsorship for, or was this like a project that you were brought on? They were like, "Oh, we want to make a ladies climbing film." Because the thing that's really powerful to me about Slaydies is like it has this whole obviously the film was great and had like again your sort of vision baked into it, but it also had the name like Slaydies. It was kind of this whole like package. When you say like, "Oh, I made a climbing film called Slaydies," you kind
Yeah.
of know what you're gonna get, and that's kind of one thing that helps these projects be really successful. So I'm curious, like, where was it your brainchild or something that you got brought on to collaborate?
They wanted me to make a film about Emily, Paige, and Margo, and they didn't really say anything else. They said, "Do you have any ideas that you'd like to suggest?" I had just been to Majorca and I fell in love with the deep water soloing there, and I suggested Majorca, and they said yes, and everybody said yes, and so we went for it. We didn't know what we would call it. It was like a female empowerment film without trying to be one.
Yeah.
I really wasn't trying to make like this like go women like I filmed us braiding each other's hair because that happened.
Yeah.
I was just like filming what was happening, and like Colette and I were filming what was happening, and like that like the film didn't really have like much of an objective in like the pre-production. I was like, let's just film everyone climbing in some beautiful locations and film everything that happens in between. And then in the
Mhm.
edit, I made it the way it was. It wasn't like I had planned all of it out before. And then
Mhm.
yeah, like somebody on Emily's Instagram, because she like was like, what should we call our film? And like
Mhm.
did like a poll, suggested
Yeah.
Slaydies, and then that's why we called it Slaydies.
Did it come out in 2017?
I think it came out in 2017, yeah.
Yeah, and like that was probably one of the, I mean, it's crazy to say this, but we started working on Pretty Strong in 2017, and
Yeah.
like part of our research and stuff was, hey, how many other films have been done that are like featuring women climbing or made by women and all the, and it's like at that point it was practically zero. Like this was probably the only one, and it probably came out after we were kind of doing the like counting. I went through like all these films and counted how many women were in them. We got flack too, and rightfully so. Like the conversations that were brought up surrounding like our film and how we were talking about it were completely warranted, and I'm really glad that they happened because it exposed our own blind spots with these topics that we were talking about.
Yeah.
But what occurred to me, just that like because our film, because Pretty Strong and Slaydies were like at the forefront of this like of a wave of like increasing representation and diversity, there's like, especially with the women's focus, it's like I think a lot of people wanted that film to be they wanted it to be like everything to everybody. Like it needed to, these first, you know, few pieces that are really trying to break through the barrier and increase representation on screen. It's like you can't be everything to everybody, and what happens is you end up, unfortunately, you end up like kind of alienating people that you want to, or for at least me, like I want to lift up with the stuff I'm making. But I think, yeah, there's sometimes an expectation of like this has to change everybody's mind about every wrong, you know, any wrong in ill in our society, and it's just not
Yeah.
possible.
As a Native woman and a brown filmmaker, I didn't really feel like very threatened by a lot of the like pushback. I see where they're coming from saying like, oh, you're filming three white women in a country that was colonized. And as somebody who, you know, was like, you know, coming from a history of colonization, like, yeah, like I see that, but I also
Right.
think, hey, let's take a step back and like congratulate La Sportiva for being like, hey, why don't we support this female filmmaker making this film? I do think that there are valuable conversations that come out of that criticism, but I do also think that it's important to kind of look at the bigger picture. Well, the last thing I'll say about Slaydies is that I think one of the reasons why it was so successful is because if you individually think about Paige Clausen, Emily Harrington, and Margo Hayes,
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about three women that are each their own like absolute force. So these photos are from, this is another shoot that was like really important in my career. This was in 2018. It was the Eco Challenge in Adventure Race in Fiji. I just get this call one day from this guy, and he's like, I remember I was climbing in Rifle, and I was in Carbondale on a rest day. And I get this call, and he's like, hey, do you have a second to talk? I want to ask you if you're interested in doing this shoot. He's like, I know I don't have a lot of money to offer you, but I can give you X amount per day, and
Mm-hmm.
you'd be in Fiji for a month. And the day rate was actually significantly higher than any day rate I had ever gotten at the time.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, cool, no worries. Like,
Yeah, you're
um,
like, I'll lower my standards to take your rate, sure.
totally. um, and I ended up going, and the other photographers, to name a few, were Corey Rich. Well, it was Corey Rich's photography team. He was the one who put the team together. Um, Crystal Wright, Andy Mann, Christian Pondella, Idris Solomon, um, Toby, Toby, jeez. Poby, and I'm forgetting Poby's last name, but he's like iconic Olympic photographer.
Oh wow.
It was like not a trivial group of people. And I
Yeah.
was like, what am I doing here? I was like in the room with all of like my photography heroes, and I was like, how did I get here? And it's so funny because like, well, not funny, but it's a really important shoot for me to reflect on, not because I look at it and think, wow, what a significant moment in my career, but I look at it and I remember what I was doing and how I was shooting this, and I see some really big mistakes, not in the
Mm-hmm.
images, but in the way that I shot them. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, so what we were doing is basically helicoptering our SD cards back to Corey. Um, and he would text me on a Nokia phone that had the Snake game. And I remember, like, in between the teams coming,
Yeah.
I would just like sit there and play Snake. Like I was like sitting on this cliff, like, in
Yeah.
this like little zone, just playing Snake. Um, and Corey would text me back, and he would say, "Hey, can you take more photos?" And
Mm.
I came from like a film background, and which is not an excuse, but I also came from a really crappy old camera that didn't have autofocus, like a DSLR. It was a Canon Rebel, and it was just broken, and so I manually focused a lot of my like early climbing shots, and I had not learned to smash it yet. And I also like hadn't learned that foreground wasn't always like the most important part of a photo.
Mm.
And anyways, I like look back on these photos and I see a lot of growth. And I think that's a really cool way to look at these. And that was a really important shoot for me. I wish I could go back and do it now as the photographer I am today. But I also like, I'm so grateful to like have the privilege to look back on it and see growth, you know?
And I'm curious because I wanted to ask you about this in our interview, but you had mentioned kind of the thinking about some of these photography heroes and not wanting to only be home 4 days a month and going on a shoot in Fiji that's 7 days of shooting, but you have to be there for a month. Like, give me a little, just kind of walk me through your sort of mental process of maybe seeing these guys traveling everywhere, guys and gals traveling all the time, and then maybe doing it yourself and realizing that's not quite for you.
Well, it's not necessarily about realizing that the traveling itself is not for me. Like, I would do this 30-day shoot again in a heartbeat. But would I take a month off? Yeah, afterwards, for sure. Like,
Right.
for a lot of reasons. Like, I would, do this shoot. Like, I would never say, like, this would be like a 5-star, absolute 100% yes for me, no matter what, where I was at no matter what I was doing. But it's more like, am I going to say, if I got the opportunity to do another shoot immediately after, I would weigh, okay, is that another like 5-star absolutely must do shoot? And if it was, I would probably do it. But then I would really like set a boundary for myself and make sure that I had home time and, like we were talking about before, climbing time, which is really important to me too. This was for Visit Idaho, and this was with Natives Outdoors, which is an all native production company that I work with from time to time. And this shoot, we went through Idaho and shot with, I think it was four of the 6 tribes in Idaho. And unfortunately, we didn't end up shooting with the Nez Perce tribe, which is my tribe. Because I was like, oh, this is going to be so sick. We're going to actually go and like shoot on my tribal land. Like, I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
And we did kind of go through some of the land, but not just kind of like on the edges. We didn't have time to like stop or stay there. And anyways, this is Reggie Soap. He's Shoshone Paiute, and he's an elder, a cowboy poet, and an artist. And we shot with him one day, and just God, he was incredible. The thing about both of these photos is that he's in full stream of consciousness talking. You just can't tell. And he was like such a rad person. I like, Paiute and Northern Paiute and Nez Perce, like, we're all very closely tied. And so a lot of these people actually knew my family names. And that's like one of the ways you introduce yourself within tribal communities is you're like, you say your family names, and you realize that you know the same people, or like they know your family, which has happened to me a bunch, which is actually super weird for me because my dad was adopted and I'm really disconnected from my family, but I know my family names, and so like it's been a really amazing way for me to reconnect with my native identity through photography. And also, like, I think a lot about like how I can use my photography to uplift native communities. And so in this case, we were showcasing native artists and kind of like bringing their lives to light through photography. We won some awards for this work, actually. And I'm really proud of like the collection as a whole, and like this is just a tiny piece of it, but it's a really cool way for me to feel like I'm connecting. And also just like I love being within tribal communities and learning about like specific tribes and doing things like that. So this was a really like valuable shoot for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask kind of like how how this project came about. And again, kind of similar to Slaydies, was it like your idea, or was it something that you got connected with Visit Idaho? Like, how did this come about?
Yeah, it was a really cool project. It was Visit Idaho had reached out to Natives Outdoors, and then Natives Outdoors like pitched the project like we had all chatted about it and and talked about doing it like this. I think they wanted to shoot with the artists, And I think they had like Visit Idaho had the idea of an elder and one elder and one young artist per tribe. And so that was a really cool way to do it. And it was funny during the shoot we had we were like I forget, I think we were on Duck Valley reservation, and we were shooting one morning at sunrise, and this car rolls up and this guy gets out and he's like, are you all native? And we were like, yeah. And he was like,
Yeah.
cool. And he immediately like relaxed.
Cool,
And
cool,
like
cool.
that was the only question, just to make sure that we were like not like trespassing. And he didn't even
Yeah.
need us to be like of the Duck Valley tribe, but he just
Right.
I
Yeah,
just
but I
feel
mean,
like
I think that's like again, it's just like it's not appropriate. I look at this and I'm like, these images are beautiful and they're stunning, and I want to take those images, but it's not. I don't feel like it's appropriate for me to tell these stories. You know what I mean? As much as I would want to, because they're beautiful and meaningful, like it's not appropriate, and it sort of you know, by really limiting who is telling the stories, we're like limiting what stories are being told and how they're being told. And so something like this is just such a perfect example of all the things coming together
yeah.
to create some beautiful work.
Yeah, I think that that's like a good question for everybody, whether you're like a producer or a photographer or filmmaker, and to really ask yourself who should be telling this story.
Mm-hmm.
And really sit on that question, because if you're non-native and you're telling a native story, I think you should have a really good reason why.
Right.
Because there are so many talented native photographers and filmmakers, and I'm not saying this because I'm like I want that job. I'm saying this
Yeah.
because other people deserve that job, and because native people deserve to be telling their own stories, and that's when really beautiful things happen.
Did you have like storyboards and like sort of images that reflected sort of the lighting and the style you were going for? Because one thing I noticed about these, because I've seen some of these images, and like it's like each artist got their own sort of treatment as far as like concept,
Yeah.
almost like the lighting and things like that. So, and you mentioned you had a lot of creative freedom, so how
Yeah.
did that sort of work in the process of like getting the job and then
Yeah.
executing?
Well, I had actually never really worked with Flash before. No, I hadn't. I had never worked with Flash, and I really wanted to like really dramatically light these portraits of these artists, because to me, I like wanted the photo to feel like art too, because that's like
Yeah.
a really cool way to show a photo of an artist, is to make the photo artistic too, because it's like they
Mhm.
deserve that. So I had just like, yeah, I made like a mood board basically, of what I wanted creatively to pursue for this piece, and it was like work I hadn't created. I have another photo later that is actually kind of similar to some of those photos that I took recently. But and now that I have all that experience, it's nice to like go back and with more ease like use the flash and execute the vision. But yeah, they just like trusted, and it worked out, and I was surprised and honored to hear like that the whole project had won um, some awards. So I don't know,
Yeah,
kind of cool.
that's very cool. Yeah, very cool.
Um, I just wanted to share some photos from the Squamish Exposed event, because that was like a really cool moment in my career as well, where I was asked to come to the Arc'teryx Squamish Exposed, which I wish they still did it because it is such a cool event. But
They're not
the
doing
idea
that
is
anymore?
that no, they don't do the Squamish Exposed part of the Arc'teryx Academy anymore.
Why?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a financial thing because there was like
Yeah.
a prize, but they basically invite photographers. So you have to be invited to go, and then you compete alongside, I think it's like five or so other
Mhm.
photographers to win. And pretty much only if you win first place does it make sense financially speaking to go try to do this.
Yeah.
'Cause, like otherwise, like
You're
you're
like,
like
day rate's not great if you don't win.
there's no day rate.
Yeah.
So like if you don't win a prize, like you get no money for this shoot. And I
Mhm.
think I was like, well, I have to, I think they like I cannot remember if they pay for your travel or not. They might
Mhm.
not. I feel like they definitely paid for a lot, or they put us up. They put
Mhm.
me up. I don't remember. Anyways, I ended up winning first place both years or that I participated in it, which was really incredible and like super super unexpected.
Remember,
And
I was the judge for one of those years.
you were a judge,
I was
yeah.
the judge in 20 when John Segrist was the host. I don't really remember if it was 2016 or 17. I think
Was that
I can't
the
remember
one
if it
that
was. I think it was the first year you won.
was it the
It was
year that I did the Stranger Things one or
Stranger Things. Yeah, it
okay,
was
that
the
was the
Stranger.
second year.
Wait, what was the other thing you did?
Oh, it was just, I don't know. It was like, it was funny because like prior to me entering that competition, a lot of people like put their slideshows in, and it would just be like a slideshow of images to music or whatever. And it would just be like photo, photo, photo. And the first year I had like taken all my photos and put them in Premiere, and I like cut all the, like, made all the cuts to the song. And I also like made the images kind of like move a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
then the following year, like everybody was like doing that, and I knew that they were going to do that, and so then I like made mine even more like extra, and then I ended up
Yeah.
winning again.
I was there when you did the motion because that's what for me was like it was so much more unique and
Yeah,
different and conceptual than what everybody else had done. And I remember the you were like second place, and then we were talking about, or you, it was like between you and one other person for maybe two other people for first place,
yeah,
and everybody wanted to go with another person who like did the most obvious thing that you can do, and I'll
right,
just say that. And then
yeah,
I was like, no, I'm like, I will say I fought for you because I was like, this is so different and this is so much better and unique, and like it's just I don't know. I wouldn't like back down, and
oh, well,
eventually
that's
everybody
nice
was
to hear.
like, "Oh yeah, you're right. This is awesome." And then I think I saw when I saw you won again, I was like, "Oh my god, I have to see what she did." And I saw that you did the Stranger Things, and I was like, "Oh, that's dope."
Oh yeah,
I
I
love that
know,
you
right?
like made a competition with a style, and then you're like going
Yeah,
back the next year, so you're like, "No, I know everybody's gonna copy me from last year, so I got to do something different."
right, no,
I take it to
totally.
the next level.
Yeah, for sure. And like, yeah, it was so cool to win. And the prizes were like these sick trophies. Like they're really cool. And I still have them in my office. And yeah,
Maybe we can get him to bring that back because that was and maybe get him to bring it back, but like pay a day rate for
I
the
mean, but that's
photographers.
like part of the cool part of doing it is that you don't get
You're
like it's
not getting paid.
so raw, you know? You're
Yeah,
just like out there like trying. And honestly, like this really helped me like become better at smashing it, become better at like commercial work. Like this was a
yeah,
great like time to just go out there and like take a ton of photos and be like, we're
right.
doing this.
You're kind of like in how what's from the beginning to end is like 3 days or 4 days. Like you scout and
Yeah,
then shoot for 24 or 48 hours. Is that right?
yeah.
And then you have like another 24 to 48 to edit.
Yeah, the first year it was 2 days of shooting and 1 day and 1 day of editing, and the second year they gave you 2 days of editing because I didn't sleep for I edited like all night long,
Yeah.
and it
They
like
were like,
crushed.
that's unhealthy. We can't be responsible for your
Yeah,
degradation
totally.
of your physical health. But it's cool. I mean, think about like, do you feel like that experience alone, whether you win or not, like you probably kind of like you leveled up a couple levels in a 5 day span or 6 day span because of this project, like because of all the scouting you did, all the
Yeah,
shooting, all the like conceptualizing things like that. Like that's
yeah.
cool that you did that in such a short amount of time.
Like these are both taken at Smith Rock, and like coming from being a Smith Rock photographer where like or like not a Smith Rock photographer but a photographer who shoots a lot at Smith Rock, like the timing of images is key, and I knew that already about photography and climbing photography and like art climbing photography specifically. um, and so I like apply that to Squamish Exposed, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how I was able to use those tools and have success because I scouted and I knew what I needed from those specific climbs. And like if you look at these two climbs here, these are two images that can only happen within like a certain window, a certain time of year.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah,
like only in November on the left image does the light pass through this notch at Smith Rock, and it shines this like vertical pillar of light on this like 514. And
Yeah.
then the right image is like only in, I don't actually remember what month this is. I just tried to reshoot this and it is not the same. So this
Didn't
is,
work.
no, it did kind of work, but it's still not the same. But yeah,
Not
like
great.
this only
Yeah.
this is like a 5.9, and it's also like this like tiny window. And so I'm just, I come from a history of being like seeing light on a climb and deciding, like writing down that time and knowing exactly when we're gonna go shoot it. And I think that that really helped me in Squamish Exposed.
How did you like come? You have all that knowledge of Smith, but then when you go to a new place like Squamish, and it's a huge place, and there's so many different areas and nooks and crannies, like how do you sort of eat that horse one bite at a time, or whatever that saying is, where it's like,
Yeah.
how do you break that down, and where do you even start with
Yeah,
scouting?
I mean, I think for me was starting by just looking at the chief and like looking at the way that the light moved on it, and then going into the guidebook and trying to see like certain areas that get interesting light, like what are those climbs, and then like looking up those climbs
Mhm.
and seeing like, okay, here's like a 90s photo of Mark Boudon, or however you say his name, on the Heart of Darkness arete, and he's in the sun, and it appears to be sunset, and this looks like it could shoot really well. Let's go up there at sunset and
Mhm.
shoot that. So it's just
Yeah.
like kind of just geeking out about it,
Mhm.
I guess.
And you're kind of like, you have I guess, the way that I approach it, and I don't do the scouting for, not as much for like climbing areas, but just in general, it's like just kind of getting a sense of where, how the light moves through the space, like overall, but then, and maybe exploring one area or going off in a direction, but then like keeping your eyes out for any interesting shadow light
Mhm.
lines, and
Yeah,
ridges that could create interesting shadows and things like that.
totally.
um,
Yeah.
just observing.
Yeah, yeah, that's always like top of mind for me. I'm like, I think that there's I'm not out there like trying to take the same photo as somebody, and it's not like I'm
Hmm.
doing that because I'm trying to be like, different. I just like want to see it in like a way that inspires me. And
Hmm.
if I can find that way, that's rad, like that's how I want to shoot it. And that's what really like excites me. Like when I come home with an image like either this one on the right or the left, I'm like, hell yeah. The
Yeah.
image on the right is so funny because it was this random guy and I didn't know who it was. And I was just over there like trying my project. I happened to have my camera and I was resting in between burns. And I see this happening and I'm like, oh my God. And I like run over to this like boulder and I'm standing on it and I take all these photos and I'm like, wow, that's a cool photo. And I walk
Yeah.
over there and, it's a 5.9 and this guy's at the base. And I'm like, hey, like, my name is Tara. Like, I just took this photo of you. Like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like, you want me to send it to you? And
Pretty cool.
he goes, nah, I've got other photos. And I was like, cool, cool, cool. That's totally fine. And then I like posted it on my Instagram and he like showed up in my DMs. He was like, oh my God. He's like, that's me. I didn't realize. Like,
You're
uh,
like, bro, did I tell you that I'm a professional photographer, and
yeah.
like people pay a lot of money for what I'm giving, like offering to give to you?
Yeah. I'm gonna try to go through the next photos like kind of quickly just
Cool.
because I do want to get to this shoot I have at the end just because I want to talk a little bit about kind of like some of the shoots I've had in the more recent days. But I put this photo here just because here's a photo of Paige that I shot recently that like, once again, like Slaydies is just providing because Paige and I are like, she's got to be one of my best friends.
Uh-huh.
And like she's always game, I'm always game. Like find people who are like who want to who believe in you, and who give you the respect to like have a creative vision and get to go try it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And like this, she asked me to come take photos of her on her project, and that's all this is really. And I just think it's a cool little GIF, and I just use it as an example of like building those relationships within like the subjects that you're shooting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like Slaydies for was a big project you for a lot of reasons, but it seems like the most is important is like obviously your friendship, but then you know,
Yeah.
you have all these collaborative partners that you're working on these cool projects with.
Yeah. And like, here's Emily Harrington, and she, like, the first time I shot with Emily is not as pictured, but the first time I shot with Emily, she was like, "What do you need me to do? What do you want me to do?" And I had like shot with men, not all the men I had shot with, because Jonathan Segrist is a great friend of mine, and he
Mhm.
really trusted me and like trusted my creative vision pretty early on. But I had shot with some other men who straight up were just like, "You can shoot with me, but like the real photographer's coming tomorrow," or like said things like pretty demeaning to me, or like not clearly not respected me. And Emily was just so like, I just had never been treated that way before. And little did I know, like, we were going to become such close friends. But like,
Mhm.
we shot these images, just because we wanted to for fun or whatever. Or I think maybe we were trying to shoot this headlamp. But yeah, that's what we were doing. And it was like kind of a fun way to try to shoot this headlamp.
Mhm.
And so it was fun to just like come up with a vision and just go execute it. And I think that's like something I really like about climbing photography is like you don't have to go out there and take the same photo that everybody else is taking. And I think that's like
Mhm.
really where you see the line between people who are creative and have a vision and the people who don't, who are just going to go take the same photo that someone else did. I put this here because I just wanted to show all the Slaydies. And then, once again, we have the last one here, which is Margo. And Margo is always like, you know, giving me opportunities to shoot kind of outside my comfort zone. Like we wanted to
Mhm.
go take some more fashion forward photos and we just did this in her backyard and I think they turned out great and it was awesome for me and awesome for her because she wanted to work on her modeling skills and just a really good opportunity to like go shoot, you know.
Yeah. And I mean the last couple images, it's like Paige wanted you to shoot her, get some, shots of her on her project. You're trying, working with Emily's sponsors, I guess, with the headlamp and trying to just execute a vision and then shooting Margo Hayes in your backyard. It's like exactly what you said, shooting the work that you want to be making.
Yep, yeah,
Um,
for sure.
yeah.
Totally. Yeah, like I want brands and companies to know that I can go get these shots too. Like, yes, I can go
Mhm.
take that dope climbing shot or like dope whatever, like that one shot that you're just like, damn, that looks sick. But I felt like at a certain point in my portfolio, like I was really like I had a lot of those like bangers, but where was
Mhm.
everything between, you know?
Yeah.
And that's really what companies look for, to be totally honest with you, is like all that in
Yeah,
between stuff.
for sure.
So this is like the like the first like chance I got to actually go and shoot a commercial shoot. And this was for Camp 4 had hired me to go do this public land shoot and really had given me a lot of creative freedom. And I just kind of got to shoot it however I wanted to. Ironically, I shot like close to 10,000 photos a day for this, which makes me laugh about that previous shoot where I shot 10,000 photos in
Just smashing the shutter
7 days.
button,
Yeah, for sure.
laying on it.
Yeah, totally. And it was cool because like it really just gave me I was like, this is my chance. I'm gonna show like that I can shoot something that is really different from everything else I've shot. And it paid well. I have great portfolio pieces from it and I got that opportunity and I can use these images for a long time to show that I'm capable of that, you know?
Yeah. Where are you at in your sort of journey with supplemental lighting, like using flashes?
Oh, I mean, I like using flashes. Image on the right is obviously lit with a flash. I, the only thing I'm not here for is I'm not here to lift all my shadows, and I'm not here to add grain to photos. So that's my only like. That's the only thing that just isn't me. Like I'll try pretty much anything, but like these photos were interesting because they got a bulk edit from Camp 4 and they came all grained up and yeah, I ended up like re-editing all of them to sort of suit my preferences. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it is interesting like the things that do and do not work for you creatively, and I'll kind of try anything really. But I have seen like these trends with like lifting shadows and adding grain, and I get it. I'd rather just shoot on a film camera if I'm going for that look.
Mm-hmm.
Than trying to make that in post, unless that's truly what the client really wants.
Right.
Um, it's just personal preferences, though. You know?
Totally. But it also goes to show, like, okay, whatever you deliver to the client isn't necessary, or what gets delivered to the client doesn't necessarily have to be what you put on your website and what you
Right. Yeah.
show to people.
Yeah, totally. This was a really recent shoot I did for Black Diamond. I did it last summer in Squamish, and I just threw these in here because I thought that they were a cool way to talk about like the image on the left, for example. Like we were shooting this climb, we get there, it's backlit, and I was like, gosh, what are we gonna do? Like, how am I gonna make this work? And then I was like, you know what? Let's just sit here and wait, and we're gonna wait until the sun comes just onto the wall or just onto the climber, and
Mm-hmm.
shoot it so the wall is in the shade and everything else is in the sun. And we waited, and the images are awesome. And I'm so glad that we
Yeah.
did, because like had I been like sloppy or like impatient, and we didn't have to wait like a ton of time, because I like put my hand out from the wall and I could
Yeah,
see
you're
like
like, it's coming, it's coming, look.
yeah, like my fingers were in the sun, and I was like, I can work with this. Like I just I think it's uh a good showing of like I don't know how to make the most out of like a difficult
Yeah,
shooting situation. And these images ended up being beautiful of Maisa,
yeah.
and like the climbing images are really cool because she is in the sun and the climb is not, and it's just
Hmm.
yeah. And then the one on the right was really cool because I had seen this old Ben Moon photo, I think, of Sunny Trotter on Eurasian Eyes, which is what the red is to the right, and it was the same, or no, it was Keith Ledzinski. It was a Keith
Mm.
Ledzinski photo, and Sunny Trotter is in the light, and it looks like there's like this light beam on it, and I'm like, wow, that's incredible. Like, how did that happen? Like, that photo really inspired me when I was up and coming. And I reached out to Keith and I was like, hey, do you know when that happens? I know you took the photo a long time ago. He didn't know. Sunny Trotter didn't know. And I was like, dang it. Okay, let's just go. Let's just go and shoot it. And I guess we're just gonna shoot it like all in the shade, because I have no idea when this light thing happens. Keith was like, maybe it happens at 6 a.m. And I was like, okay. Um,
Do you go up on a maybe? Because is
uh,
it pretty high up? Is this on the cheap
well,
or is this like
he
around?
he seemed really unsure about that. And Sunny was like, maybe it's at 2 p.m. And I was like, okay. So
You're
we
like,
went,
yeah, I'll just hang out on the wall for 8 hours. It's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah, so we went like just middle of the day. And it was a commercial shoot too. So we couldn't, I couldn't like make this all about this shot or anything. But
Hmm.
we're up there and I'm shooting it all in the shade. And then it freaking happens. And it was just this glorious moment at the most
Yeah.
random time of the day that this beam of light comes through this tiny little notch and just like lit this up. And Connor was at the base. And I was like, Connor, go! And he like hikes up there and, does his thing. And he's such a talented climber and just
Yeah,
was able to.
luckily he's a crusher.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I know. Well, he would have been able to just like whatever French free, even if he wasn't a crusher. Anyone can grab a quick draw, but thankfully he was able to just scamper easily right up there and get it. And it was a very memorable,
What
like,
was the timestamp?
do you, should I say, or are people
No,
just gonna?
no, you do not have to give your secrets away here. So
I mean, it's
I
not
just
really a secret. It's just like a little bit more work. And we got really
yeah.
lucky, and I do know
Well,
that.
and it's gonna change during the time, like the depends on the
Yeah,
time of year.
yeah, for sure. And we just got lucky.
Completely.
If someone wants to know, they can ask me. I put this photo in here because I love this photo, and I took this photo and I put it into a photo competition, and I put it on Instagram, and I put it on the Nat Geo Adventure Instagram, and it literally like nobody likes this photo, and I just put it in here because against the grain, against it's not that they don't like it, but it just
Yeah.
wasn't. It didn't like take off. It wasn't selected for the contest. Like it wasn't like didn't get a lot of likes. And I just want to put it in here because I just want to say that I freaking love this photo. I love everything
Yeah.
about it. And I just,
And everybody
yeah,
else can suck it.
yeah, they can all suck it because this photo is sick. Like, I would love to see this on like a billboard.
Yeah, that would be really dope as a billboard.
We just kind of shot this randomly. It was like when Paige was in between sponsors, and I didn't have any work, and we just went up to NCAR in Boulder and like shot this.
Yeah, but it could be like a Lululemon ad or like an
No,
athletic
totally.
billboard or you know what I mean? It has that like commercial fitness, healthy lifestyle feel to it.
Which I think is what we were going for. I think at the time Paige was, I think she had reached out to Lululemon, and I think that's actually what we were kind of going for.
Going
So
for.
in
Well,
the context of that,
you nailed it.
yeah. Yeah. So I just so this photo can see the light of day. I put these in here because this was like this was the most recent climbing trip I took, and we were talking about whether or not you bring your camera to the crag, and like I ended up taking these on a rest day, but I did take a ton of photos on this trip, and I wish I could have taken more, but I just thought they were kind of cool. This is in Cuenca in Spain.
Well, it's so cool too because it's like the same perspective.
Yeah.
Or like very similar. It seems like you're in the same spot with a different lens, or are you in a different location altogether?
Oh, same spot, different. Maybe like I was standing a little. No, yeah, different lens
A
for
little
sure.
lower. Oh,
And
okay.
also, yeah, just the right one is that very, very last light in the
Mm.
winter time, and it turned so vividly pink that my husband was like, "That's extreme," and I'm like, "I
Yeah,
know."
you're like, can you like dial the saturation down a little bit?
I'm like, "I'm trying."
And
I've
can
had
you
that.
move up the shadows and bring some grain? That would be great.
Right, totally. So yeah, and then I think the last photos I wanted to share were just a few from this shoot that
Wow,
I just did for Nat Geo Travel. And
that's
this
wild.
these photos are out now in their article in the Nat Geo Adventure, or sorry, not Nat Geo Travel article. So since I like decided to just focus on stills, I got two rad Nat Geo jobs. I got one shooting with images I can't share that I love so much. It was a landscape photography shoot, and then
Wow.
this one that was just a travel Nevada, and we got to go to this see these old trains, and I love shooting trains, and I just like
That's so
the
cool.
like everything about this photo. I love it. Uh, it was cool too because the reason why it's like pink is because
Mhm.
those lights were flashing. So like every other photo was like
Oh, wow.
brilliant
Yeah.
pink.
It was like a natural strobe.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
super cool.
That's really cool.
Hogwarts, anyone?
Yeah. What
Um,
is it? Platform 12 and 3/4? Is that what it
right.
is?
And then this was just like an in-between photo that I really liked from that little part of the shoot too, where yeah, I don't know, I just really like this photo. I just
Yeah,
thought
love
I'd
it.
throw it in there.
Looks like it could be a different era for sure.
Yeah, I know. It was really cool to feel like you're thrown back. So this was also on that shoot, and
Wow.
this is my friend Chuck, and he lives on the Goshoot Reservation and is Goshoot. He's also Hopi, and we through this shoot I had asked Travel Nevada because they like suggested all these things that we were going to shoot, and then I was like, well, if this is a Travel Nevada shoot, like we should use this opportunity to include one of the tribal nations, and I already knew Chuck, and so I suggested that we do something with him. And they were like, sure, you can do whatever you want. And so then Chuck and I got on the phone, and he was like, I just don't want like one of those typical like in regalia shots. Like I
Mhm.
want like something that like feels like real, like for us,
Mhm.
and shows like power. And he is the wellness coordinator for the Goshu tribe, so we
Oh,
decided to
wow.
do something that showcased like him, and he's a weightlifter. So
Very
this
cool.
is like 405 pounds, by the way. And I was like, could you just hold that real quick?
Just yeah, just a little longer.
Yeah.
Can you make it look like you're trying less hard? Thanks.
Right.
I love that. That's well. So, are you? I know with the move, focusing on stills, and it seems like you've gotten a couple more travel focused jobs, but
Yeah.
still, maintaining sort of the thread of focusing stories from tribal nations, things like that. Like, where do you sort of see your career going? Like, what are projects that you would really like to be working on?
Honestly,
Do you
this
want to go more into fashion or?
and people always ask me like, what you want to do, and I'm pretty much like anything except for weddings, honestly.
Hmm.
I not that there's anything wrong with weddings. I've just shot weddings and they're not for me. Like it's just not something that
That
I
you're yeah.
felt passionate about. But yeah, I'm always really open to pretty much anything, and that's why when like cool random jobs like this Travel Nevada or the landscape photography shoot even came to my inbox, I was just like, yes, of course. I mean, the
That's
landscape photography one was cool too because like I shoot obviously if it's like pretty out and I'm outside, which I
yeah.
often am, I'm gonna shoot that. But yeah, I just had never like really dedicated myself. Like and so I was out there just joking that I was like Keith Ludzinski. Me and Eliza Earl were out there, and I brought her out as my assistant, and we called it Tara and Eliza's Great Adventure.
Nice. Who's the client for the landscapes?
That one was actually it's going to be in the national parks book that Nat
Oh,
Geo makes. They make like not an annual, but like a every 5 years or something. They like make a book, I think.
re-up
I saw that they had
that.
already
Very cool.
done one. What's
Awesome.
that?
Very cool. They like kind of remake it with like same kind of book idea, but like new images and stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Very cool. That sounds
And then I don't
awesome.
know. I have one more image, and it kind of has like a failure story, but I don't
Okay.
know if we have time for it. So
Yeah, yeah, let's do it.
okay, cool. So this is also from the Travel Nevada shoot, and it's not like the image is not a failure. I just had an interesting story about a failure in this whole process of shooting heli skiing in the Rubies. Um, it was this shoot was incredible, and like as a set of images, like I'm really proud of it. But the skiing photos were something that a part of it that I wasn't proud of, which is a huge bummer. And it for a lot of reasons, and it's such a learning process to like come out and be like, okay, like I'm gonna reflect on like why these images weren't great. And like one reason you could say like, hey, like Tara's not really that much of a skier, but like I also have spent so much time on skis, and also I can shoot anything, right? Like
Mhm.
it was more that like we went out and shot in these horrible conditions. Like it was
Mhm.
this massive blizzard, and we couldn't even take the heli back. We had to like take the ski cat back down, and had about a 15-minute window to shoot skiing. That was like so much
Oh,
snow was
wow.
falling onto my camera that my camera was like soaked. And on
Wow.
one hand, you're like, oh, well, that can make some cool images. But like the terrain that they gave us to shoot in, and maybe I should have shown some of the ski images, but I think I'm just like, I don't want to look at them. But they're just like, the angle is so low that like they just don't,
Yeah.
like, it just doesn't look, and it was just, you have to kind of take it as it is. And like, I started a little journal. Well, okay, I'll just say that the angle was like very low, and that's because like everything else was like very high avalanche risk. And so they were like, this is the area you can shoot in, which was like one of the most uninspiring angles I had. I was like, I don't like, what am I a magician? Like, what am I gonna do? So I was like, I'm just gonna shoot tight and try to get action, right? Like, because there's nothing like relevant to see in this imagery. Like the angle was so low. And I ended up after the shoot. The client was stoked on all the images, and I think as a whole, like they look great. But I decided to start a journal at the end of the shoot of like things I learned on shoots and like how I could do it
Mhm.
better next time. And so I was able to like take a lot of time to self-reflect on some of the mistakes that I made on this shoot, and just use that information for next time, and try to like think of it as like always striving for excellence, not perfection, and just like using that as like a means to like always be progressing.
What would you have been done differently with this specific shoot?
I think let's see. A lot of the things were out of my control, but I think that because I don't shoot as much skiing, I was unwilling, or I don't shoot as much skiing as climbing. Like if I was put in a scenario where the conditions were really bad for climbing, I would have a lot of problem solving skills to get around that.
Yeah,
You know what I
totally.
mean? Because I've
Yeah.
shot so much climbing, and I didn't
Hmm.
have as many problem solving skills to get around this. So I was like, well, what do we do if it's like avalanche risk? You know what I mean? Like, how are we going to
Hmm.
shoot this? And I don't know what I could have changed. I've talked a lot about that. Jules and I have talked a lot about this because she was my assistant on this shoot, and like what could have gone better.
Hmm.
Um, and really just like circumstantially, like it was just not a great situation.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I wrote in my journal like everything that went wrong. And I think that even if I don't have the answer to what I could have done right, I think that having that experience of things going wrong is really valuable.
Yeah, it's more valuable than when things don't go right, you know, like, or when things go right, because they say this in the avalanche, you know, community, where it's like you don't know how many times you've screwed up if you continue to get away with it. You only know if you've like really screwed up when something
Right.
bad happens. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of that like you couldn't fix it because it sounds like it was the situation and you did the
Yeah.
best with what you had at the time.
Yeah, and I wasn't given a lot of freedom in this part
Mhm.
of the shoot because of the like obvious safety
Yeah.
requirements and like being guided, which I'm sure that you know what I mean, and like
Mhm.
there wasn't a lot of like room to breathe creatively anyways, and so I struggled with knowing what the right thing to do was because I was getting a lot of no's to my questions, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
even sitting in the front seat of this helicopter was a
No.
no.
No. That's a no.
Yeah.
Well, thanks
It
for
was always a no.
I appreciate you sharing that, you know, this experience, because I think, like you said, we learn more from our failures.
Yeah.
You know, if we take the time to reflect and really think about it, and, you know, talking about it with someone who else had the experience, and like, that's,
Yes.
you know, all we can hope for is a little bit better each time.
Yep, sure.
Well, Tara, thank you so much for sharing these images with us today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.